welcome to another episode of Dialed In. I'm your host, David Sillick. With us today, we have Ron Autrey, the author and extraordinarily successful businessman in Northeast Florida with a great history and two great books. And our special guest today, Mark Lamping, president of the Jaguars organization. Mark, Ron, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Mark, I'd really like to start with, you such a transformational leader coming into the Jaguar organization, not just for the front office, but really for all the investments that Shad Khan has been making downtown. Give us just a real brief recap and kind of where you are with that.
Well, things are moving on. It's in a very positive way. I mean, you have to have a lot of things that come together at the right time. It starts with somebody who has the capital to be able to make an investment, to make a difference. And the person who has that capital, in this case, Shad and the Khan family, have such a great belief in the potential of downtown Jacksonville, and they love the community, and obviously the community provides a lot to the Jaguars. And we've always felt that the strength of downtown will be intertwined with the long-term success of the Jaguars. So as downtown goes, so will the Jaguars, and anything that Shad can do, and then we can support him in making downtown a place that more people want to work, that more people want to live, and more people want to visit. That's a great thing for downtown, but it's also a great thing for the Jaguars.
For almost 30 years I've been here, and there's been those inflection points that we kind of get to. And Ron, you've been past chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, and Mark, you've been such a instrument of change downtown at that inflection point. I really, and I've said this before, but I really, truly feel it. We're on that cusp. We're there. The stadium of the future. Ron, you've got, with your history with Miller Electric, a lot of history with the Gator Bowl. Well, talk to us a little bit about that.
I had the same first thoughts as soon as Mark began speaking, that as past Chamber of Commerce chair, we told people, and I heard many people before and after me say, we're almost there, we're almost there. And today, it's more than words, and you can see the work that Mark and Shad Khan are doing on our riverfront, and it's materializing as we speak.
Yeah, you can really feel it, Mark.
Well, you can see the progress. And again, there's a lot of attention is focused on, these mega projects, whether it's the stadium or the Four Seasons and the office building that's, it's topped out now, and new marina that will serve boaters in a really positive way downtown. So those projects always get their focus, but for every one of their projects, there's 5 or 6 other smaller projects that are the ones that at the end of the day are really going to make the difference in downtown. So it's great to have catalytic projects like the big ones that Shad is supporting, but it's just as important, perhaps even more important, to have those smaller projects that come along. And, you see what's happened in the Brooklyn neighborhood, see what's going to happen with Gateway Jackson downtown. This is so much more than just one entity in Shad that's investing downtown. And that's the best part of it, because there's room for everybody.
It's really great to hear you acknowledge that. You deal with so many balls in the air at one time. How do you do that? How do you keep organized?
Well, you have to realize you're going to drop some balls. Just try not to drop the important ones. So it's my day is different every day, but I always try to remind myself to focus on those things that are fundamentally going to impact the organization long term moving forward. And at the top of that list has to do with relationships and interactions with your employees. No organization goes any further than where the employees will carry them, and so that's always a item that's the top of my to-do list.
Being dialed in to it. Ron, how do you stay dialed in when you're putting together your thoughts for your books?
Well, that's a big question, but I want to say something about what Mark said. It's the small projects, and that really means something, because Mayor John Payton said years ago, we're not going to get there until we have 10,000 people living and working in downtown Jacksonville. And frankly, we're not there today, but it's going to happen very quickly. But it's not going to be just because of a beautiful new iconic football stadium. It's going to be the pizza shop and the coffee shop and the laundromat and the gas station and the grocery store. And those things have to happen, but they wouldn't happen without the driving force and the presence of the Jaguars.
Yeah, without question. Yeah, so dialed in, the name of the show. And you know, Mark is certainly dialed into the projects that he's overseeing and in the downtown redevelopment area, really throughout, as you'd mentioned. When we transition that to one of the most difficult things in writing is organizing those thoughts. How do you keep focused? How do you stay dialed in?
I make outlines, usually on my pillow at first, and I think, or I look through the bottom of a wine bottle and I go, yes, that's the way it'll work. But I make outlines, and from the outlines, I do research, and I stack up paper like old school. And, you know, the memoir, Ron's World, 72 years of life in Jacksonville, where I was born, and the research goes this high in stacks of paper because it has bits of history that people either never learned or, like you and I, have forgotten. And when people read it, they go, wow, I forgot all about that. Or I didn't know there was such a huge influence from the 50s and 60s on the exponential technological developments that we experience today. And it's all there.
Mark, what's the one thing in your career? You've had an amazing career from St. Louis, from Kansas City, St. Louis with Anheuser-Busch, St. Louis Cardinals, the Jaguars. What's the one real thing in your career that you can point to and go, man, if I hadn't done that, I don't know what would have happened?
You know, it's a lot easier to do this retrospectively because you don't know at the time the impact it's going to have. Probably the biggest risk I ever took. I was 34 years old and had a great job at Anheuser-Busch, and I quit and became the commissioner of the Continental Basketball Association, of all things. And lo and behold, 6 months later, and I tell this, I share the stories with people. You know, I left on the best of possible terms. I didn't burn any bridges. You know, I didn't engage in a discussion of, we really want you to stay. What would it take for you to stay? It's like, you know, I've already made that decision. I think that would just be insulting to you for me to engage in a conversation about, okay, I'll change my mind if you do this for me. So that was totally off the table. And, you know, 6 months later, I get a call back from Anheuser-Busch to come back as president of the St. Louis Cardinals. And I don't know if I would have got that job had I not left and the way that I left. You know, they probably reminded themselves, you know, look, we have this unique situation going on with I was a tremendously fortunate of just being at the right place at the right time. This wasn't anything that I personally accomplished, but, you know, you had baseball strike coming along. Anheuser-Busch, who owned the Cardinals at the time, knew that it was going to be a battle to win people back, to follow the team. I was a known quantity. I came up through the sales and marketing. All my background's finance, but I came up through the sales and marketing side of the organization. And they thought, oh, well, look, we need the current president of the team is retiring. We need somebody to replace him. Let's get somebody who has a sales and marketing background. I was a known quantity. So, you know, probably the biggest risk that I ever took. And I had tremendous support of my wife, and our kids were young at the time, but, you know, that's a hard thing to do.
Sure is. As we wrap up, I'd like to hear from you both. One lesson in leadership that, as you look back on your careers, that you would impart to today's business owners. Ron?
Don't be the top of the organization. If you control the outcomes of the people that work for you, they will rise to your level of incompetence. You need to delegate, create teams, empower them, educate them, and they'll do the work. They'll get it done. And I know Mark probably shares that.
Great advice. How about you, Mark?
Well, as I just to repeat what I said earlier, you know, you have to recognize you're only going to go as far as the employees are going to carry you. It's not the other way around. You're not going to carry the employees. And the other piece is, and this is something that I think all of us have recognized as we've gone through our careers, not everybody is motivated by the same thing. When I was first starting, you were focused on just a few things. You're focused on what's the pay going to be, what are the benefits like, and do I have a career path? Those aren't necessarily the top three things in people's minds today, and you need to be sensitive to that. And not everybody's the same. Not everybody's motivated by the same thing. But what you have to do is you have to make sure that you're nimble enough and flexible enough to be able to provide individuals a customized approach that, if we are successful as a company, these things that are most important to you are standing in the community, what your training program might be, what your compensation, what your benefits might be, that all those will accrue to you if we are able to succeed as a team.
Do you have time for a Mark story?
Great messaging. Oh, yes, absolutely. I love storytelling.
I'm on the O-Search Great White Shark Expedition ship in Cape Cod, and we slow down because this wealthy guy on a giant sport fisherman pulls alongside, and he offloads pallets of beer. And he gets on board, and we're cruising to go catch the great white shark. I think it was the one that Chris Fisher named after his mother. I'm not sure what the connection is there. And I've asked the guy, and he said, Jacksonville. I said, do you know Mark Lamping? He says, Mark, he was my roommate. Tim?
Yeah, Tim Sheehan.
Yeah.
Tim Sheehan, great family. Yeah.
And how long did it take to find that shark and tag it and release it?
We've had two experiences. One of them right out of Mayport when they got that ship. It was very rough, and my guest backed out. And I said, well, I'm not going to go without you. So I gave the positions to Jacksonville University. They put some students out there. They were out there 5 or 6 hours, got the great white shark. In Cape Cod, we were maybe day 3 or 4, but they'll go 2 weeks sometimes and not see a shark.
Well, you know me, we start talking about fishing, we could have a whole nother segment, a whole nother episode. But I'll wrap this up. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Dialed In. I'm your host, David Sillick. For more episodes of Dialed In and other shows on the Daily News Network, go to thedailynewsnetwork.com.